Hello, this is part 4 of our Intro to Claude Code series. And in this video, we're going to talk about the slash commands of Claude Code. The slash commands of Claude Code has two main utilities, all right? The first utility is it is used to configure the different properties of Claude Code, okay? And the other utility is it is used as a shortcut to prompts that otherwise we would have to type manually, okay? The cool thing is we can create our own custom slash commands as well and use them for our specific purposes as a shortcut to the actual prompt that we want Claude Code to execute, okay? So let's see these things in action right now, okay? So here we have our VS Code and I have this empty folder called commands, okay? We have been using the VS Code extension user interface that we get when we install the Claude Code extension in VS Code, right? Basically, we click on this button and when we click on new session, we get this nice user interface directly inside of VS Code and it has its utility. It's quite helpful, but all the latest features of Claude Code first land in the terminal version of Claude Code, okay? And especially the slash commands, even the reason why we have slash commands to set these different properties is because Claude Code is a terminal first application, right? So especially for, for experimenting with all these different slash commands and also later on when we talk about the sub agents that we get to create, we would anyway need to make use of the terminal version of Claude Code, okay? So here's how you can set it up, right? Because at the moment, whenever I click on this Claude button, it always opens up a new tab in the same user interface, right? But let's change that. The way you do that is click on this gear button and go to the settings of VS Code. And there you can search for the extensions, the Claude Code extension, and just come down and you will be able to find use terminal checkbox, okay? Just tick it on so that we by default make use of the terminal version and not the VS Code user interface that we get here, right? So since we have that use terminal checkbox checked, when I click on this button, it is going to launch a terminal version of Claude Code, okay? Let me close these VS Code user interfaces and here we have it. This is like the actual Claude Code which is running in a terminal, right? So that's pretty cool. Now, as I shared earlier, there are two utilities to the slash commands. And how do you use the slash command? Just press slash. So in this text prompt area, press slash and you will be able to see all the different slash commands that are available for you. Okay, you can just press up arrow key and down arrow key to just see all the different slash commands there are. And you can also go to this official Claude Code documentation and find all the different commands that are available. So it has a purpose of those commands, respective commands, and you can just go through them one by one and experiment. Okay, so we're just going to run through a couple of these commands and then we're going to create our own slash command and see it in action. Okay, so let's run a couple of slash commands. One would be context. So this is something that I commonly use. So this gives you a sense of the context window of the current session. And here it's like a fresh Claude Code session. So we have not yet used any tokens, but you can see that already like some 31,000 tokens have been consumed, like 3% of the tokens, even before we start using Claude Code. Probably this is because, of the different things like, basically the system prompt and the system tools and maybe the custom agents and, skills and so on that are just taking up that 3% of space. Primarily system tool seems to be like, taking up most of the context. Anyway, so this gives you a sense of the amount of context that is getting filled up as you are conversing. Okay, so that's quite useful. Let's say we ask this agent to build a simple application for us. Let's ask it to build a simple to-do list application in PySide. Having some sort of a practical code would help us to explore these commands further. So I'll just ask, so this is like a fresh terminal, right? So we can just ask Claude to do something. So let's ask it to build this to-do list. So I'll just click over here in the text prompt area and I'm going to use Whisper Flow to actually communicate my ideas. So I'll just say create a simple to-do list application using PySide. I want this to be a desktop application. written in Python and PySide. All right, so we just hand it over to Claude and let it cook it up. While it's doing its thing, let's open up another Claude Code. So we'll just make some space for this other Claude Code, which is we have here. And we'll continue exploring. So while this guy is cooking, let's explore this guy. So one nice slash command that I found recently is this option to set different names for the various Claude Code sessions that you have. So you can do that by pressing this /rename. So after the command, if you give a particular name, that will be used to identify this particular Claude Code session. It's more like a label that is added to it so that we as humans can identify what this particular Claude Code session is about. So let's use this secondary Claude Code as more of a consultant, and this Claude Code will use it as a worker. Okay, so we'll use this as, we'll call this consultant. All right, and you see the name that you gave is now showing up here. So that just helps us to identify, this agent especially when we are working with multiple agents. And another Claude Code slash command is like the color. Okay, so we can set different colors for different agents to identify them easily. So you can see that already this has like this nice blue color, but like, let's, we can set multiple colors. We can see all the different colors that you can set here, right? So maybe we'll give this a nice yellow color, and you see, so this Claude Code session has this nice name and a color to identify it. So that's pretty cool. While we were setting these things up, the other agent seems to have done the work. So let's look at our file browser. And here we have it. Here we have this to-do app. It's a single file Python application. So let's launch it and see it in action. Now, a cool thing that Claude Code offers is this, shell mode. Okay, so if you press the escalation character by pressing Shift 1, you enter into this shell mode whereby you can run shell commands directly from inside of Claude Code. So that's super useful because you don't need to come out of Claude Code and then use the terminal to run some terminal commands. You can just run it directly over here. So I will just say I'll enter the shell mode by using this Shift 1, this exclamation mark, and then what we'll do is we'll run that application. We say Python, and it's inside of that to-do app, right? And then we'll say to-do app, right? So let's launch it. Cool. So we have our to-do list app here, which was created for us by Claude Code. And so we can add a bunch of tasks here. Let's maybe add coding, create a blog post, make a YouTube video, right? So we have a bunch of tasks that we have added, and then I think we can even check them off. Cool. Really? See, that's nice. So this is pretty cool. And we can also clear the completed stuff after we check them off. We can clear completed, and you can also delete some selected task if you don't want them anymore. So that's pretty cool. So that's cool. So we have an application to work with. Let's quickly give this worker agent also a name. Okay, and we do that by doing /rename. And the name that we want to give this particular agent is engineer, okay, or builder. All right, so this is the builder and this is the consultant. Okay, so we have like a small team right now. Okay, so we are the architect and we have a builder and a consultant to help us to build what we want to build. And maybe the color, let's set it to be like green for growth. So let's set this to be /color green. Okay, cool. So we have a green agent and a yellow agent. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so here, since we asked to do something, right? So here you see that it has now, when you use a / command to see the context once again, you'll be able to see that a bit of context would have been filled up now, because especially because it has done some work, right? So previously it was just 3%. Now you can see that 4% of the context has been filled up. We do have a lot more, space because we are using Fable here, and it has a 1 million token window. But for our demonstration purpose, what we'll do is there is this very useful command called clear. Okay, so what that helps us to do is basically it helps us to clear the context. Especially when you don't want, especially when you have another piece of work that you want to get done, which has nothing to do with the previous things that you have done, right? You can just use this /clear and it will just clear the context window such that it just becomes a fresh new session. It's as if like, opening up a new Claude Code session altogether, but you're just doing it in the same, with the same agent. You're just clearing its like context completely. So /clear does that for us. So since I did /clear, if I check out the context once again, you will be able to see that see, we are back to square one, right? Like now we only have 3%. So that 1% extra, like that 10,000 tokens that was previously held for, the creation of this particular to-do app is now gone, right? So that's pretty cool. So that's what this clear command helps us to do, okay? So next there is this other / command called recap. So what this gives us is like, it just gives us this one-line summary of like what we have been doing in this current session. So the cool thing about this is even after we cleared the session, right, it can still give us some sort of a recap. So here, when I use that command, you can see that, it's still able to recall and give us this recap saying that you asked for a PySite 6 to a stock app, which is built, tested, and working at this particular location with add, checkoff, delete, and JSON persistence. Okay, so it is giving us this, recap of what we have been doing in this current session. So that's a pretty cool feature to have. Now, one thing if you noted here is when we use the clear command, right, the name and the color that we gave to our particular Claude Code session, right, vanishes. That's something to be mindful of. So here, like, so for example, we have this name consultant and it has this color yellow, right? But if I go and use the clear command, those things go away. So just be mindful of that when you're using this. Okay. So another very useful command is the model. Okay. So by using this command, we can select the model that we want this particular Claude Code session to use. Okay, so in this case, I'm using Fable, but you can switch to Opus, Sonnet, or Haiku depending on what you're working on, right? And we know that Haiku is like the cheapest and fastest model, and Fable is the most, capable and the most expensive model, right? So anyway, so that's basically how you set the model by using that model command. And another thing that is there that's quite useful is the cost. So this gives you a sense of like, the amount of cost that this particular Claude Code session is using. So, you got all the stats that you would want to know about, based on the usage in this current Claude Code session, right? So that's what this is. So you can come out by pressing escape. Also, like, there is another configuration that you could do because you could set up the effort level based on what you want, what you're working on. Like maybe, by default, I think it's like high. You can set it to be extra high, maximum, or even ultra code. This is like, whoa, So it's just that like, depending on the scope of the work that you're working, right? If it's like a very challenging, complex work that you're giving to Claude Code, you might want to use Ultra Code, but just be mindful that when you're using Ultra Code, obviously it's going to consume a lot more tokens. Okay, so just be mindful of that. But these are some options that are there to set the effort level of your Claude Code sessions. Okay, so that's what this is. And you can also check out all the different MCPs that has been connected to this particular Claude Code. You can see, that we have Gmail, Google Calendar, Google Drive, all these things connected. It basically helps you to manage the MCP servers that are connected to your Claude Code session. And there's another useful command called rewind, okay, which helps you to, go back in time in a sense. So it basically restores the code and or conversation to a previous point. Okay, so let's just first have some conversation and then let's use the rewind command. Okay, so here we already have this to-do app and we have cleared the session, so it doesn't have that context, but still what we'll do is we'll just ask it to do something on top. Okay, we have this application which has this like persistent things and all those things. So let's just customize this to-do list and let's introduce a feature where you have multiple tabs. So it's not just one tasks that you have, like you can have different types of tasks. Okay, so let's just ask it to build the ability to create multiple tabs of tasks. Okay, and we can just ask it here to build that feature for us. Now, even before we do that, we could make use of the init command. Okay, what is that? So basically, whenever we are asking Claude Code, especially if it's like a fresh session, to build on top of like the code that is existing in your project, right? What it would have to do, it would have to like literally go here and like look at all these different files and understand the project and get context on it, and then only it can build on top of it, right? So that is where this init command comes in handy. So when you say init, what it's going to do is initialize this new Claude identifier. So this Claude identifier is something that you can build on your own, but this is just like a shortcut, if you will, that essentially just creates this Claude identifier with the code base automatically. So it just goes through the code base, tries to understand it, and builds this Claude identifier file for you, which later when a new agent comes along and works on your project, will easily able to gain context from that Claude.md file instead of like just wasting tokens again going through the project. So that's a very useful command to have, especially when you're working with like a project that has a bit of code. Okay, so let's just run this init command and then we'll add that feature. All right, so it has created the Claude.md file for us. So if we double click on it, let's check it out. So you can see that it has a bit of an overview of the project, and it also has like how you can run this, a bit of architecture information and all those things. So that's pretty cool. So that's pretty useful for like a new agent to get working on this. So what we'll do now is we'll just like even make use of a brand new Claude Code session, right? Like let's not even use this anymore. So let's use another Claude Code session and use this brand new agent to work on our feature, right? So the feature that we want to have here is, I want you to create a new feature to the to-do app where the user will be able to create multiple tabs, and in each tab they will be able to maintain a new list of tasks. Okay, so that's the thing that we want to achieve, and the user should also be able to like just delete a tab if they want to, and that basically page of tasks should just get removed when they do that. Okay, so that's basically this new idea that we have, like a new feature. So we just asked this agent to work on it, and this agent, since it has that Claude.md file, it already has context on what this project is about. So it just directly goes to work on it for us. While it's doing its thing, let's close this other agent because we don't need that anymore, and let's just use this as our primary agent. And you can see that it's actually creating, removing some lines and adding some lines. You get a high level overview of what's going on, and cool, it looks like it has finished the work. Now let's run the application. We can use the shell mode and say Python and this, and here we have it. So we have our app now with this feature of adding additional tabs. So we'll call this second list as home chores, right? And this first list, we'll call it as office work. Okay, so we have office work and home chores, right? So in home chores, we can maybe say buy groceries, right? So we can have a separate list based on our context. So that's pretty cool. So it has added this additional functionality for us. So that's very useful. Now the thing is, we went through this exercise to show that rewind command, right? So here, like in this session, since it has gone through this work of creating this feature, what I'll do is this feature actually looks good. Okay, so I will keep this feature and let's add something very simple on top of it, and then we'll rewind it back so that it reverts back to this state of the application, because this is like a nice application. Why do we want like revert completely back and remove this tabbing functionality? So what we'll do is we'll maybe add a button over here which says when you click on it, it should say hello. Okay, so it's just a silly feature that we add and then we just revert it back. Okay, so that's basically the idea. So what we'll do is we'll ask the same Claude Code to now add that new functionality. We'll just say, I want you to add a silly button at the top right, which when the user clicks on it, which should say have a productive day. Okay, so that's the silly button that it's a simple feature that is going to add. So let it do it. And the cool thing about using Claude Code is you can actually see the the lines that it's getting that are getting added and the lines that are getting removed and all those things. We get a high level overview directly. We get to see the diff in the different files, and it looks like it is finished doing that work. So let's launch that application again. So we'll go to the shell mode and say Python and launch the application. And here we have our silly button. Okay, so if you click on it, it says have a productive day. So that's pretty cool. But it's a silly button, right? And we don't want to have it. So we'll just want to revert it back. Now, the way you can do this, right, in like Claude Code is you have this option to rewind. Okay, that's a pretty useful functionality. Like, and here you see that it gives you the state to which you can rewind to. So here, so this is the current, place we are in, but you can go back to like, this state where you had added this prompt saying, I want you to add a silly button, right? So that was the previous prompt, right? You can go to that stage, okay? Or you can even go back a step further and go to the very beginning of this Claude Code session where you actually asked it to create that new feature to have that tabbing capability, right? But we want to keep the tabbing capability. We just want to go back to the point where we asked it, we just gave the prompt to create that silly button, but we don't want the silly button to be created. Okay, so I just like click on over here, so it will go back, and we can go back to that state. So here it's asking, confirm you want to restore to the point before you send this message. So this is like, important. It goes to the point before we send this particular prompt. Okay, so it's saying the conversation will be forked, the code will be restored. Okay, so to in this application. Okay, so that's pretty cool. And since we like clicked on that button, it just actually restored to that particular checkpoint. And here we see that if you launch, we even see that prompt pre-filled for us here. If you press this button, it's gonna like try to do this work again, but we don't want to do it, right? So we just like remove all of this, and we just run the application again and see the state of the application. And see, that silly button has been removed, right? So that's a pretty cool functionality. So that's what the rewind command helps us to do. Now, before we move on to creating our own Claude commands, there is this one particular Claude command which helps us to power up to Claude Code, right? So this command basically helps us to discover Claude Code features through quick interactive lessons, okay? So let's run this and, see what it offers. So here you see, like, you have this power ups, 1 out of 10 unlocked. Each power up teaches one thing Claude Code can do that most people miss. Open one, read it, try it, and mark it done, right? So this is super useful, especially as we're starting out. Just powering up by going through each of these things will be super insightful. We can see how we can talk to your code base, steer with modes, undo anything, run in the background, teach Claude your rules, extend with tools, automate your workflow, multiply yourself, code from anywhere, dial the model, right? So it basically gives us an overview of all the different things that we could do with Claude Code. It's a very useful command to be aware of, okay? So that's basically an overview of slash commands in Claude Code, okay? So now let's create our own slash command, okay? And for that, we are again going to just use Claude Code to help us to set it up. So what would you want to make into a command? A command would be basically any prompt that you keep repeating again and again to Claude Code, okay? So that prompt, you can just put it as a command and reuse it whenever you need it on demand, okay? So that's basically the idea. All right, let's create a custom command for this project. Now, what would be a command that would be useful for us? Now, we know that this application is basically a to-do list application, right? So we know that when we launch it, we see a bunch of tasks under office hours and a bunch of tasks under home chores, right? And the way it is holding all of this data is by means of using a JSON file. And you can see the JSON file over here. So if I open it up, you can see that this is where all the complete state of the application is held here. See, the tabs office work has these tasks, right? Like whether it's done or not. And home chores tab has this task and whether it's done or not, right? So this essentially is a snapshot of the current state of our application, right? Let's say we want to make backups of this particular tasks.json file, whenever we need to, right? So let's say if we want to like probably create some sort of a folder here called task backups. At certain points in the application, we just want to make a copy of this JSON file and put it over here with some sort of a timestamp information, right? So that's something that we might do over and over again as we develop this application. What if we make it into a command, right? Then it would be super useful. Instead of us going and copying and pasting this inside this directory, putting that current timestamp, we could make that into a command. Okay, it's just a prompt away, right? But that prompt, we just store it somewhere so that we don't have to keep repeating it over and over again. So before we create the command, let's actually create the prompt, okay, and see how Claude set this up, and then we make that prompt into a command. All right, so let's do it. I'll delete this folder for now, and let's clear this session. Okay, let's give it the prompt. I want you to make a backup of the, so we can mention, and another cool thing is we can mention files in our project by means of using the @ symbol. Okay, so here we say @, and then since tasks.json is inside the to do app folder, we say to do, we'll go here and say to do app / tasks.json. Right, so this is that file that we want to backup, and we say I want you to make a backup of the JSON into a directory called backup_tasks in the same folder, and the backup JSON file should have the current timestamp as a suffix to it. Right, so that's basically the prompt that we have, right? You can go as detailed as you want. So this is the prompt that we are going to give Claude. Let's see what it does first. Okay, we have not made it to a command and all. Okay, it's just a simple prompt that we are giving to Claude, and let's see what it does. See, it's saying I'll create the backup task directory inside the folder and copy with the timestamp. Okay, so it looks like it's doing that work. So it created the backup tasks folder, and it even created that copy of that JSON file. So that's pretty cool. So it finished that work, and so if you open it up, you can see that we have the copy of the JSON file. Perfect. So this is something that we might repeat as we develop this application further, right? So what we are going to do is we're just going to make this prompt into a command. Okay, so we'll just ask Claude Code to do that also for us. So we'll just say, I want you to convert the above prompt into a / command that I could access directly from any Claude Code session in this project. And let's also give the name that we want for this command. We'll call it backup tasks. Okay, I want to call this command as backup tasks. Let's press enter and see what Claude Code does for us. Perfect. It looks like the command is set up. So we can see the command over here. Okay, so in this directory, there is this folder called .claude that has been created, and under that we have a folder called commands, which in turn contains the command itself. So when you open it up, it's basically just a markdown file. Okay, so here it has a bit of a description of what it is. Back up this JSON to this particular location with the timestamp and suffix, and it uses a PowerShell command and all. Okay, here you have the actual prompt that is going to be sent to Claude to do this work. Okay, so it says make a backup of this particular file, ensure the directory exists, create it if needed, and then copy this particular JSON file into the directory. It even mentions the naming convention that is supposed to be used, and then confirm that the backup file was created and report its full path. Right, this is pretty cool, and it even has the PowerShell commands that it needs to run. Perfect. So now, since we have this command in place, let's try to run it. Now let's actually change the state of the tasks to be something else. I'll just open up the application, and let's maybe add a new tab called hobby or something. Okay, and in that let's add playing football. Okay, so we have another tab with a task in it. Okay, so now, and we'll also maybe check a couple of these things. So we have basically changing the state of the JSON file by doing this, right? So after we do this, we'll even close this application up, and we can see in the JSON file that we in fact have changed the state of the application. You see that this has in fact a new tab called hobby, and it's got playing football in it as well. So now let's make use of that command to make a backup of this particular JSON file. Okay, so what all we need to do is either in this Claude Code or in another Claude Code session, we can just say /backup And there you have it. See, when you type back itself, it's like showing you the command, the custom command that we created along with all the other commands from Claude Code. And here you see backup tasks. It even gives you a bit of description as to what it is. Backup this particular JSON file to this particular location, right? So that description that we saw in the command itself, which is over here, right? So this guy, we actually have it over here. So if you want to change whatever description is shown here, you can actually edit this particular string if at all that's what you want to do. So that's pretty cool. So because we have this command in place, let's run it. So here we say backup tasks and see, so it's actually going to do it for us. And there you have it. Now we have another backup based on the timestamp, the current timestamp. And when you open it up, you see that it has the new tab and the current state of our application present, right? So this is pretty cool, right? So this is like a useful slash command that we have created for this project. Like this, based on your creativity, you can just keep on adding more and more slash commands, and it will basically save you a lot of time and make you much more productive when you are using Claude Code. So this basically was an overview of making use of slash commands in Claude Code. Hope this video was useful, and thanks for watching.